Hello, lovely listener. Before we drift into the night's peaceful journey, I invite you to share your name, the country you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. Feel free to comment below with your thoughts, perhaps any feelings that surfaced, contrasting sensations, or new ideas that came to mind while listening. Your honest reflections help us create a warm, connected space where we can relax together. Tonight, we're diving into something a little darker, a time of plagues, punishments, and pottage. We're exploring what life was really like during the Middle Ages. Forget the castles and chivalry Hollywood sold you. The truth is, you probably wouldn't last a single day. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's settle into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1325. The good news, you're alive. The bad news, so are the fleas. Your bed is a half-rotted straw mattress stuffed with bugs and hay that smells like a barn floor, because it was a barn floor just 3 months ago. No memory foam, no pillows, and definitely no Egyptian cotton sheets, just a wool blanket that hasn't been washed since last winter and now weighs as much as a small cow from the grime accumulated. You blink awake as the church bell clangs and the distant medieval alarm clock, only louder and less merciful. Your home is a wooden hut with one room, no windows, and an open concept floor plan where your family, livestock, and domestic insects all share the same space. The smell. Oh, it's a fragrant symphony, a blend of stale beer, human sweat, goat, and something you pray isn't mold, but probably is. Scented candles haven't been invented, and even if they had, they just melt on your dirt floor. You try to stretch, but immediately regret it. The air is freezing and your joints ache. You're 22 years old, middle-aged by medieval standards. Your spine cracks like an old wooden door. Your knees sound like a bag of rocks being shaken by a confused peasant. Getting out of bed is a gamble. The floor is either wet from last night's rain leaking through the thatched roof or crusty from something your neighbor's chicken did. Either way, your bare feet are now part of the ecosystem. And privacy, what's that? Your entire family, maybe a cousin who never left, all waking up beside you. No bedroom, no curtains, no me time, just communal everything. Welcome to morning in medieval Europe, where parasites, rodents, and at least 8 other people are always with you. This is just how your day begins, and it only gets worse from here. You managed to crawl out of your haystack of horrors, congrats. Now nature calls, and it's not politely. It's screaming. Here's the part where you start missing the modern bathroom. No toilet, no seat, no toilet paper, no flush, not even a humble plunger. Relieving yourself in the 14th century is an adventure, a social experiment, and often a small public event. If you're a peasant, your bathroom is likely a wooden bucket behind the house already full, because Uncle Wolfstan had a rough stay-in at a night after eating bad turnips. The smell. Biblical. You hold your breath, do your business, and then here's the kicker: toss it into the street. Yes, the street. You're supposed to shout Gardilu, watch out below. But no one ever moves fast enough. Streets in medieval towns are open sewers, a charming river of human waste, animal droppings, and mystery liquids you'd rather not examine. If you're lucky enough to have a public latrine, congratulations, you get to sit shoulder to shoulder with strangers in an outhouse where privacy is a myth and ventilation a cruel joke. Small talk, maybe. Breathing deeply, not a good idea. Toilet paper, never heard of it. Most people wipe with straw, leaves, rags, moss, or nothing at all. That might explain why handshakes weren't popular yet. And if you're in a castle, well, it's better sort of. You might have a guard robe, a hole in the wall that drops your waist directly into the moat. Great idea, except enemies sometimes climbed in through the back door. Talk about a window of vulnerability. Whether you're a farmer or baron, toileting is a humiliation ritual, cold, public, dangerous, and disgusting. One slip on a wet stone path and you're face first in humanity's leftovers. And you still haven't brushed your teeth, more on that soon. You survived the toilet, so maybe you deserve a reward, right? Perhaps a nice breakfast? Something warm, delicious, comforting. Sorry, this is medieval Europe. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is grim. No eggs Benedict, no coffee machine sputtering awake, no avocado toast. You sit or squat near the fire with a wooden bowl of something that looks like it was scraped off a muddy boot. Welcome to your daily ration of pottage, a thick, Gloopy stew made of whatever you can find. Grains, root vegetables, maybe a few beans if you're lucky. It's been simmering in the same pot for days, sometimes weeks. New ingredients are dumped on top of the old, less of a recipe, more of an ongoing edible experiment. On the side, a hunk of bread so hard it could deflect arrows. Made from coarse rye or barley flour, often bulked up with sawdust, ground up acorns or other creative ingredients, because wheat is a rich man's fantasy. This loaf, not your friend. You don't slice it, you negotiate with it. And drinks? You're not sipping orange juice or oat milk lattes. You're drinking beer, yes, beer at 6 a.m. Why? Because the water is teeming with parasites and filth. So you start your day with weak ale, low alcohol, high survivability. Kids drink it too. No one's happy about it, but at least it won't kill you immediately. Want some meat or cheese? Dream on. That's reserved for Sundays and saints' feast days, and only if your Lord is feeling generous. Most peasants don't eat meat more than a few times a year. Fresh fruit, only in season and only if it hasn't already fermented into wine. Spices, only for the rich. A pinch of pepper costs more than your monthly wages. Salt, valuable enough to be locked away. So you chew your gritty bread, gulp your medieval beer, and do your best not to think about the rat that might have nibbling on your porridge last night. Breakfast doesn't energize you, it just happens to you. Now that you're underfed, it's time to work like your life depends on it, because it does. You've eaten your sad medieval breakfast, and now it's time to get dressed. Or, more accurately, to put on your one and only outfit. A rough wool tunic or linen shift worn every day for months, possibly years. No seasonal fashion, no changing wardrobe, just wear this until it disintegrates or causes a fungal infection. Underwear, optional. If you're lucky, maybe a linen undertunic. If not, well, you're going commando under layers of scratchy, sweaty wool, all stitched together by someone who probably had no idea what a seam was meant to look like. No washing machine, no soap, no dry cleaner, just stained, stiff, and scented like a compost pile marinating in a pigsty. If you wanted to wash, it's no easy feat. Haul water from a river or well, heat it over a fire, scrub your tunic on a board with ashes, or hang it in the sun if it's out, which is about 3 days a year. And shoes. If you own any, they're untreated leather, barely stitched, offering as much support as a banana peel. Most peasants go barefoot through mud, dung, and sharp stones, risking disease with every step. All this means one thing: your skin hates you. You itch constantly, fleas, lice, bed bugs, the entire insect kingdom lives rent-free on your body. No one escapes. You're scratching your armpit with a wooden spoon, chatting with the local priest, your skin raw from rubbing, your scalp a battlefield. If you develop a rash, too bad, no dermatologist, no hydrocortisone, no one to tell you it's probably scabies. Just keep suffering. If you're lucky, no infection, though that rash will stay with you for 6 months as an unwanted medieval sidekick. Dressed in misery, wrapped in discomfort, it's time to head outside. But don't smile, because in the Middle Ages, smiling was dangerous. Not emotionally, but dentally. No toothbrush, no toothpaste, no mouthwash, no floss. Oral hygiene. As popular as bathing, meaning not at all. Some might chew a twig or rinse with wine or vinegar, but mostly your teeth are left to their own devices and they're not doing well. By your mid-20s, your smile resembles something pulled from a haunted crypt. Cavities rampant, gums swollen, and those stains, not just food decay. You have more rot in your mouth than a medieval root cellar. Sugar, while not yet everywhere, is becoming more common among the rich, imported at great cost, used in tiny cakes or to show off wealth. Nobles get their teeth rotted faster, peasants slowly, with fermented bread, gritty porridge, and years of hard chewing. Toothaches. They're a constant, medieval weather, always there. The kind of pain that makes you consider praying, drinking, or pulling your own tooth with pliers. And that's not a joke, that was the actual treatment. No dentists, just barber surgeons who also cut hair. And aesthetics, not a thing. Imagine pulling a tooth by candlelight with an iron hook and no pain relief. Infected tooth. Hope you like fevers, because without antibiotics it can turn into sepsis and kill you. That same toothache, it could be your final chapter. No social relief, either bad breath, halitosis, and a mouth full of issues. If you're single, your smile doesn't matter, you're judged by your land and livestock. Your mouth is a battlefield and it's losing. But now, for a story from History 1 that truly captures the brutality and brilliance of the era, the story of Catherine the Great. Before she was Catherine the Great, She was Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst, born in 1729 to a modest German princely family. Her childhood was strict. Her mother, Johanna, was cold and obsessed with social climbing, while her father, a Prussian officer, was distant and disciplinary. From a young age, Sophie learned how to walk the line between obedience and cunning, reading voraciously, speaking multiple languages, and mastering the art of observation. These skills would serve her well in one of Europe's most brutal courts. In 1744, at just 14, she was summoned to Russia to marry the Grand Duke Peter, destined to be emperor. Her mother pushed her forward, but Sophie had her own game in mind. She converted to Orthodoxy, took the name Ekaterina, Catherine, and stepped into a foreign empire with no way back. Her marriage to Peter was a cage, awkward, distant, and fraught. Peter, obsessed with toy soldiers, was more interested in playing war than ruling, and refused to consummate the marriage for years. He admired Frederick the Great and resented the Russian court. Meanwhile, Catherine embraced Russia, learning the language, studying its history, and memorizing Orthodox rituals. She wanted to belong. Over time, Catherine realized her marriage was a trap. Peter was unfit to rule. She waited, observed, and quietly planned. When Empress Elizabeth's health declined, Catherine saw her moment. In 1762, after nearly 2 decades of waiting and scheming, she seized power in a bloodless coup. Elizabeth had died, and Peter III was crowned, but his reign was a disaster. He alienated the church, insulted the nobility, and flirted with Prussia. The court turned against him. Catherine, watching this unravel, made her move. She rode through St. Petersburg in full regalia, proclaimed herself Empress Catherine II, and won the allegiance of the Imperial Guard. Peter was deposed and shortly after mysteriously died officially from a hemorrhoidal colic, but rumors say it was murder. Catherine had taken the throne not by birth or marriage, but by wit and audacity, an outsider who became a ruler. Her rule wasn't just about holding power, it was about transforming Russia. She aimed to modernize and expand, waging wars against the Ottoman Empire, claiming Crimea and parts of Poland, and securing warm water ports. She was a fierce diplomat, a builder of cities, and a patron of arts and Enlightenment thinkers. She corresponded with Voltaire for over 15 years, invited Dato to her court, and pored over legal texts to reform Russian law. She didn't just want to rule, she wanted to remake Russia into a European power. Yet her private life was equally legendary. She had lovers, many younger men, often politically influential, and rewarded them with titles and estates. Gregory Pugachev, one of her most famous lovers, was a brilliant and bold man who helped shape her military and colonization efforts. Their relationship blurred the lines between love and politics. Some believe they married in secret. The gossip, ruthless, satirical pamphlets painted her as insatiable and unhinged, even spreading grotesque tales involving a horse meant to smear her legacy. But her critics missed her true power. She wielded her sexuality as part of her strategy, surrounding herself with loyal men and separating emotion from governance. Her reign wasn't without danger. In 1773, Pugachev, a Cossack claiming to be her late husband Peter III, led a massive peasant uprising, promising liberation, land, and lower taxes. The rebellion was huge, taking towns, killing nobles, and threatening the entire empire. Catherine responded ruthlessly, crushing Pugachev's forces in 1774. The revolt proved the limits of enlightenment in a feudal land. She doubled down on order, reaffirming noble control over serfs and suppressing dissent. Her empire expanded further, pushing Russia's borders wider, claiming Crimea, parts of Poland, and establishing a vast, diverse mosaic from the Baltic to the Black Sea. Catherine's legacy was complex. She modernized education, founded the Hermitage Museum, and promoted art and science. She even introduced smallpox inoculation, publicly receiving the vaccine herself. But she also extended serfdom, reinforcing the inequality she partly aimed to reform. Her rule was a balancing act, an enlightened despot who believed stability and expansion justified her autocratic methods. She rewrote the map of Eastern Europe and reshaped Russian society, leaving a mark that endures. By her death in 1796, Russia had grown larger, wealthier, and more formidable. She was a ruler of contradictions, a woman navigating a man's world, reshaping it in her image. Behind her imperial portraits and state decrees was a woman deeply aware of her precarious position, ruling through intellect, strategy, and unyielding will. She was more than an empress, she was a myth, a legend, a force of nature. And her story reminds us that even in the darkest chapters of history, resilience and cunning can forge a legacy that lasts centuries. So, tonight, as you slip into your clean bed with indoor plumbing, antibiotics, and central heating, take a quiet moment to thank your ancestors and the modern world who fought rats, famine, and feudalism so you wouldn't have to. She came to the throne through a coup. She ruled an empire that didn't want a woman in charge, and yet she not only endured, she thrived. Catherine was never content to be ornamental. She read constantly, wrote endlessly, and never stopped learning. Her daily schedule was intense hours spent reading reports, corresponding with foreign powers, editing state papers, and managing a court filled with rival factions. She didn't simply sit on the throne, she worked it like a seasoned stateswoman born for power. But in many ways she was lonely. She surrounded herself with courtiers, lovers, and artists, yet in her memoirs she admitted how few people she could truly trust. Her son Paul, whom she distrusted and kept at arm's length from state affairs, grew into a man she feared would undo all her progress. Her greatest emotional partnership with Gregory Pugachev faded into a deep friendship, but his death in 1791 left a wound that never truly healed. Catherine crafted her image with care. She understood the power of narrative and wielded it better than most monarchs of her time. She posed as the mother of Russia, an enlightened monarch, a warrior empress, and a lover of the arts. But beneath those roles was a woman who had endured rejection, betrayal, scandal, and rebellion, and who kept going. When she died in 1796, she left behind an empire transformed but also questions. Could she have done more to end serfdom? Were her Enlightenment ideals compromised by politics? Was she more of a reformer or ruler? History remembers her by the title she never gave herself, the Great. Not because she was flawless, kind, or just, but because she took power and wielded it on her own terms in a time and place where women weren't supposed to have any. She didn't just wear the crown, she rewrote what it meant to deserve one. Now, let's shift to a different kind of story, one from the depths of the ancient Maya world. In the humid jungles of Chiapas, southern Mexico, the ruins of Palenque whisper stories from a civilization long gone. Towering temples rise above the canopy, their limestone faces eroded but still brimming with secrets. And in 1994, one of those secrets revealed itself. A team of Mexican archaeologists, led by Fanny Lopez Jimenez, was surveying Temple 3, a modest pyramid near the famed Temple of the Inscriptions, which was the tomb of the mighty King Pakal. They found something unexpected, a sealed, hidden chamber beneath the structure. No looters had touched it, it was pristine. When they broke through and lowered themselves inside, they discovered a stone sarcophagus resting in silence. As they opened the lid, red dust billowed out like smoke, brilliant, shocking red. Inside was the skeleton of a woman, buried with care and reverence. Her bones were fragile but intact, her skull still adorned with a jade mask, and her body surrounded by offerings, necklaces, diadems, ear spools, all crafted from jade and shell. Everything about her burial screamed royalty, yet no name was inscribed, no glyphs identified her. It was one of the richest female burials ever found in Mesoamerica, yet utterly mysterious. Who was she? A queen? A priestess? Perhaps even Pakal's wife? The researchers called her the Red Queen and the name stuck. But even with modern forensic techniques, they couldn't determine her identity. All they knew was she lived around the 7th century, during Palenque's golden age. Unlike most Maya tombs, hers had been hidden, untouched, and intentionally isolated. Her burial wasn't just ceremonial, it was spiritual. She wasn't meant to be remembered with words, but through ritual, color, and the mystery she left behind. The most haunting feature of her tomb wasn't her jade jewelry or the silence of the chamber, it was the red dust. A thick layer of cinnabar powdered mercury sulfide covered everything. To the Maya, cinnabar wasn't just a pigment, it was sacred, symbolizing blood, rebirth, and the life force connecting humans to the divine. Red was the color of sunrise, sacrifice, life emerging from death. Covering the dead in cinnabar was a ritual to transform the body, to preserve it for transition rather than eternity. For the Maya, death was a passage, a crossing into another cosmic layer. So the Red Queen was being prepared not just for burial, but for deification. But cinnabar was also dangerous, highly toxic. Repeated exposure could lead to mercury poisoning, tremors, hallucinations, even death. The Maya likely didn't understand the chemistry, but they knew its potency. It was volatile, powerful, and deadly. To anoint the corpse with it was to declare this person was no ordinary mortal. Palank's greatest king, Pakal, was also buried saturated in red powder. That detail sparked questions. Was she his wife? His mother? Someone of equal divine status? Her skull was placed on a jaguar skin, another sacred symbol. Obsidian blades, bone needles, and miniature jade figurines hinted at rituals performed during her life or in her honor at death. Every part of her burial told a story silent, rich, layered with meaning of power cloaked in secrecy. She was a woman prepared to cross into the underworld, not in silence but in ceremony, drenched in the color of sacrifice. Surrounding her remains was a world of silence broken only by gleaming jade, shell, and obsidian. These weren't mere ornaments, they were offerings, carefully chosen to accompany her on her journey to the Maya afterlife, the Xibalba. Jade necklaces, heavy and cold, radiated a sense of eternal life, symbolizing vitality, the jungle's green, and the breath of the gods. Only the elite were buried with jade, and her adornments signaled her influence, perhaps even divine favor. One of the most haunting objects was her jade mask, subtle, constructed from tiny mosaic tiles, designed to mimic her skull. It served a ritual purpose, protecting her soul, preserving her identity, presenting her as divine before the gods. Near her bones lay bone needles, obsidian blades, and shell artifacts, tools of ritual or symbols of her status as priestess, healer, or royal matriarch. An engraved bone pin hinted at her voice, faint, yet unmistakable, lost to time. Ceramic vessels, still sealed, likely held offerings, food, drink, incense meant to sustain her spirit in the journey beyond death. The Maya believed the afterlife was dangerous, filled with challenges, trials, and gods of death. Proper burial was essential for safe passage. Her tomb was intentionally simple: no gold, no chariots, no ostentation, just items of spiritual weight, guiding her soul through the cosmic maze. It was a map for her transition, a gateway into rebirth. Her bones rested within Temple 3, a smaller pyramid deep inside Palank, designed for the dead to journey downward into the underworld, a symbolic descent into the Xibalba. The chamber was sealed, untouched for over 1,000 years, stark and silent, with no murals or carvings, perhaps an intentional choice. This was a space not for the living to interpret, but for the dead to transform. The limestone sarcophagus was simple but deliberate, echoing the scale of cosmic rebirth. Unlike Bakal's elaborate scene of death and renewal, her tomb focused inward on her body, her ritual, her transition. The tomb's east-west alignment mirrored the sun's journey from life to death, a sacred passage. In Maya cosmology, death wasn't final, it was a passage across into another realm. The Red Queen wasn't just buried, she was being prepared for rebirth, bound to the sacred order of the universe. Her burial was a carefully crafted ritual, her body wrapped in cinnabar, encased in stone, surrounded by offerings, each element a piece of her voyage. Her grave was a sacred portal, a statement of power, of eternity, of transformation. Though her name was lost, her story endures silent, profound, mysterious. She was a woman who ruled in life, and in death, she was being elevated to divine status, an eternal part of the cosmic balance. Her story prompts us to re-examine assumptions. Maya women, especially royal ones, weren't just passive figures, they were powerful. They were diplomats, priestesses, dynastic anchors. Their bloodlines were political currency, used to forge alliances and legitimize rule. Sakak, the mother of Pal the Great, had taken power herself when the throne was vacant, ruling as queen regent, issuing decrees, guiding construction. She was a ruler in her own right, not a placeholder. Across the Maya world, women held major roles, engaging in warfare, diplomacy, and governance, often portrayed standing beside or above kings. Their names, their stories, once carved in glyphs, were erased over centuries of colonization, but the evidence of their influence remains. The archaeology reveals a different story than the colonial lens, one of complex gender roles and power negotiations. This context casts the Red Queen in a new light. She may not have ruled with a crown in her hand, but her burial, rich, sacred, and positioned close to Pal, suggests she was a central figure in the royal order. Her jade mask wasn't mere ornament, it was a symbol of her identity and influence, protected in death, just as she was in life. Her bloodline may have been the very thread holding Palank's dynasty together. In Maya belief, a queen wasn't just a consort, she was a keeper of sacred lineage, a spiritual conduit. an intermediary between gods and mortals. The Red Queen, though nameless, was never voiceless. Her silent tomb speaks volumes of power, of ritual, of influence, marking her as a woman who transcended her time and left an indelible mark in history. In her world, death wasn't the end, but a continuation, a sacred crossing into the underworld, a planned transformation. Her burial was a testament to that belief. Her bones rest in stone, her essence in cinnabar, her legacy in architecture, ritual, and myth. She remains a symbol of the unseen forces that govern Maya life, power held in secrecy, in symbols, in silence. And though her name is lost, her story persists, an enduring enigma, a reminder that women in Maya civilization weren't mere spectators, they were vital architects of history and eternity. And now, shifting to a different realm, Frida Kahlo. Born on July 6, 1907, in the vibrant district of Coyoacán, then a village on the outskirts of Mexico City, her childhood home, the Casa Azul, was a sanctuary of color and contradiction filled with quiet strength. It would later become a museum dedicated to one of the most iconic artists of the 20th century. Frida was the third of 4 daughters, born to Guillermo Kahlo, a German-Hungarian photographer, and Matilde Calderon, a devout Catholic of indigenous and Spanish descent. Her parents were opposites, Guillermo reserved and intellectual, Matilde religious and emotionally distant. Frida inherited her father's introspection and artistic eye, but also her mother's fierce resilience. As a child, Frida was imaginative, outspoken, and bold. She read voraciously, asked questions most adults avoided. But at 6, she contracted polio, which left her right leg thinner and weaker. She tried to hide her physical difference with long skirts, but her spirit was never limited. The illness kept her bedridden for months, isolated from other children. During this time, she grew close to her father, who encouraged her to exercise, ride bikes, and stay sharp. Unlike most girls of her era, Frida didn't aspire to become a wife or homemaker. Her goal was to become a doctor. At 15, she enrolled at the prestigious National Preparatory School in Mexico City, one of the few girls accepted. There, her rebellious wit, radical thinking, and unique style set her apart. She joined a group called the Cachucas, young intellectuals debating philosophy, literature, and politics. She was drawn to revolution ideas that challenged tradition. On September 17, 1925, Frida's life changed forever. After school, she and her boyfriend Alejandro Gomez Aras boarded a wooden bus. They laughed, teased, argued. Frida never did anything halfway. Moments later, the bus collided with a streetcar. The crash was horrific. The streetcar crushed the bus against a wall, splintering wood and flinging passengers. Frida was impaled by an iron handrail, entering her left hip and exiting through her pelvis. Her spine fractured in 3 places. Her right leg shattered, her foot dislocated. Her collarbone and ribs broke, her shoulder was dislocated, her abdomen pierced. She was just 18. Someone covered her with a borrowed coat. Others noticed her shimmering not from blood, but from the gold powder she carried in a pouch, which had exploded on impact, dusting her in glittering ash. Frida was rushed to the Red Cross hospital, undergoing multiple surgeries over the following months. She spent weeks in a body cast flat on her back, writhing with infection and uncertainty. Her dream of becoming a doctor slipped further away each day, but in that stillness, something began to stir. Her father gave her brushes, her mother rigged an easel above her bed, with a mirror so she could see herself. And there, in plaster and agony, Frida began to paint. Initially out of boredom, then out of obsession. Her first subjects were her own reflection, her only sure subject. But what emerged wasn't vanity, it was survival. The crash had broken her physically, but it opened a portal into her mind, her body, her pain, her identity, forming the surreal language that would define her art. She painted herself as a split, pierced, bleeding figure, raw, honest, and unflinching. Her early works, painted on tin or wood, drew inspiration from Mexican devotional paintings telling stories of suffering and miracles. Her body became her canvas, impaled by nails, floating in barren landscapes, tethered to broken columns. Her self-portraits revealed her fractured, exposed, yet resolute. She painted her pain, her trauma, her defiance. Her art was a reclamation, a way to survive and tell her story. It blended folk art, surrealism, medical illustration, and symbolism, dreamlike autopsies of her soul. Once she could walk again, painfully, Frida was no longer the girl who wanted to be a doctor. She was an artist, transforming her suffering into a force of creation. In 1928, at just 21, Frida met Diego Rivera, Mexico's most famous muralist, a towering presence known for his politically charged frescoes. She admired his work, but now she sought his opinion directly. She asked bluntly, "Do I have talent?" Diego looked at her and said, "Yes, and not just out of kindness," recognizing in her something rare, a raw, unfiltered voice full of rage, irony, pain, and beauty. They began a passionate, tumultuous relationship. They married in 1929, an odd pairing: Diego massive, unfaithful, famous; Frida sharp-tongued, fiercely independent, already walking with a cane. Her parents called it an elephant and a dove, but their bond was intense. Diego supported her art and growth, but his infidelities, especially with her sister Cristina, devastated her. In response, Frida took lovers herself, both men and women, allegedly including Leon Trotsky and Georgia O'Keeffe. They divorced in 1939, then remarried a year later, with new terms, Frida retaining her autonomy, her home, her identity. Their second marriage was less about love and more about partnership, a union of equals, of shared revolution. During the 1930s, Frida followed Diego across the United States, San Francisco, Detroit, New York, where he completed major murals. These years exposed her to American capitalism's contradictions: wealth amid poverty, opulence amid suffering. She despised the materialism she saw, missing Mexico's grit and color. While Diego painted murals of revolution, Frida embraced a quieter, more personal, sharp, surreal, emotional. She painted smaller works on tin and canvas, self-portraits that bore her pain and resilience. Her body, battered from her accident, surgeries, and a failed pregnancy, became her subject. She depicted bleeding, fractured, exposed forms, her face calm and direct. One of her most iconic works, Henry Ford Hospital, shows her lying in a hospital bed, crying, surrounded by floating symbols of loss: a fetus, a snail, medical equipment, a cracked pelvis. It's raw, graphic, honest, and unflinching portrayal of her suffering. Back in Mexico, Frida immersed herself in leftist politics. She and Diego hosted Leon Trotsky during his exile, and she wore traditional indigenous dresses, symbols of her cultural pride. Her art was inseparable from her beliefs, her identity, her body, her politics intertwined. She painted the human toll of revolution: bodies in pieces, minds on fire, eyes staring back with defiance. She became not just a painter of pain, but a painter of resistance. By the late 1930s, Frida returned to Mexico, no longer just Diego's wife, but a force in her own right. Her Casa Azul in Coyac, her sanctuary, was alive with color: bright cobalt walls, yellow trim, Aztec statues, parrots, and monkeys wandering freely. It was an extension of her soul, a space of tradition and rebellion. She surrounded herself with artifacts: pre-Columbian relics, folk art, revolutionary books. She wore bold dresses, flowers in her hair, and painted amid the scent of copal incense and street music. Her work grew more intricate, symbolic, political. The two Frida shows her in European attire with a bleeding heart, and in indigenous dress, strong and composed, a visual autobiography of love, loss, and heritage. In 1939, she exhibited her work in Paris, praised by Picasso, Breton, Kandinsky. Yet, even among surrealists, Frida was different. When Breton tried to categorize her as a surrealist, she pushed back. "I never painted dreams, I painted my own reality." She depicted Mexico's vibrant life: skeletons, hummingbirds, hearts, thorns, corn, blood, honoring her roots and exposing the violence beneath. Her art pulsed with symbolism, blending tradition, myth, and personal truth. Her health, however, continued to decline. Multiple surgeries, infections, chronic pain, yet she painted on, often bedridden, her body in constant battle. Her work grew darker, more defiant. She painted herself in the broken column split, pierced with nails, her spine a cracked ionic column. Her face resolute, her gaze unflinching. Pain was her constant companion, but it fueled her art. She also became more politically active, joining the Mexican Communist Party, protesting, marching, calling out injustice. When her health worsened, she appeared at protests in a wheelchair, defiantly holding signs. In 1953, she finally received her first solo exhibition in Mexico, long overdue. Her health was fragile, and doctors warned her to stop. But Frida had her own way. She arrived in an ambulance, carried on a stretcher, and was placed at the center of the gallery in her hospital bed. Dressed in traditional attire, surrounded by her art, she greeted visitors with tequila, laughter, and that fiery gaze. Her last paintings were raw and powerful. Marxism will give health to the sick. She painted herself in a steel corset, cradled by hands of the oppressed. Her final piece, a still life of sliced watermelons inscribed with Viva la vida, long live life. Frida Kahlo's last days were marked by defiance and joy. On July 13, 1954, at just 47, she died in her beloved Casa Azul. The official cause was pulmonary embolism, but those close to her whispered of exhaustion, years of pain, surgeries, and struggle. Days before, she attended a political rally against the CIA's coup in Guatemala, weak and in a wheelchair but with her fist raised high. Revolution was her final heartbeat. Her last diary entry was simple: "I hope the exit is joyful and I hope never to return." Her funeral was held at Mexico's most prestigious cultural institution, the Palacio de Bellas Artes. Her body, draped in the red flag of the Mexican Communist Party, was surrounded by friends, family, artists, and revolutionaries. Diego Rivera was inconsolable. He called her the greatest love of his life despite their tumult and betrayals. After her death, Frida's voice only grew louder. Initially dismissed as too personal, too political, her work and story began to resonate anew, especially in the feminist and artistic movements of the 1970s and 80s. She became a symbol of pain transformed into beauty, feminism born of resistance, Mexican identity, queerness, and disability. Her unibrow, flowers in her hair, and fearless gaze turned her into an icon. Her home, the Casa Azul, a museum; her diary, a sacred text; her paintings in the world's greatest museums. Frida Kahlo had spent much of her life in Diego's shadow, but in death, she stepped into her own light. She left behind more than paintings. She left a mirror for us all to see ourselves. Not with pity, not with fear, but with fire. Today, her face is everywhere, on t-shirts, murals, posters, memes. Her signature unibrow, her floral crown, her piercing gaze, immediately recognizable. But what makes her legacy so powerful isn't just her image, it's the truth she revealed. Frida never sought perfection. She never fit into anyone's mold. In a world demanding conformity, she offered rawness, messy, vibrant, angry, joyful, contradictory. She celebrated her difference, her disability, her queerness, her politics, her culture. She turned suffering into sacred art, transforming pain into power. She's become more than an artist. She's a global symbol of defiance, feminism, cultural pride, and creative resilience. For queer communities, she's a fearless bisexual icon who lived openly in a time of silence. For women, she's a reminder that power doesn't need permission. For disabled artists, she's proof that pain can fuel the brush. For Mexico, she's a daughter reclaimed, fierce, folkloric, forever part of the national soul. Her paintings, once dismissed as too strange or too personal, are now among the most revered. Works like Self-Portrait with Thorn Necklace and Hummingbird in the Broken Column aren't just seen, they're felt by anyone who has suffered and needed to turn that suffering into something sacred. She lived on the margins and turned them into the center stage. She embraced contradiction, a communist who wore gold, a betrayed woman who loved again, a body in pieces with an unbreakable soul. Throughout it all, Frida Kahlo painted not just with color, but with conviction. She never asked to be a symbol, she simply told her truth. And in doing so, she shared that truth with millions who had never seen themselves reflected in art before. Now, when we see her face, we see courage, we see color, we see resistance, we see Frida not gone but immortal. And so we arrive at a moment where her legacy extends beyond her paintings and her tumultuous life, beyond even her death. Frida Kahlo's story has become a beacon for countless generations who find in her image a mirror of their own pain, resilience, and defiance. Her unibrow, once seen as unconventional, now symbolizes unapologetic individuality. Her bold colors and raw honesty challenge us to embrace our authentic selves, no matter the world's expectations. Her life reminds us that beauty is messy, that strength often comes with scars, and that true power resides in embracing every part of who we are, even the broken, the wounded, the misunderstood. In the decades since her passing, Frida's influence has only grown. Museums dedicated to her work attract millions from around the world, people eager to connect with her story, to feel her spirit in every brushstroke. Her home, the Casa Azul, has become a pilgrimage site for those seeking inspiration, and enduring sanctuary where her vibrant life and revolutionary ideas continue to inspire new artists, activists, and dreamers. Her image adorns murals, t-shirts, tattoos, and posters, an icon of resilience and rebellion. But beyond her iconic appearance, it is her unwavering honesty about her suffering, her unapologetic celebration of her heritage, and her fierce advocacy for love and identity that make her truly immortal. Her influence extends into contemporary conversations about gender, sexuality, and disability, areas where her voice was ahead of her time. Frida lived openly as a bisexual woman in a society that often silenced or marginalized such identities. She refused to hide her queerness, instead turning it into a source of strength and a symbol of liberation. Her art celebrates love in all its forms, romantic, platonic, self-love, and challenges us to break free from societal constraints that seek to define or limit us. Her story encourages those who feel on the margins to find their own voice, to craft their narrative with courage and authenticity. Her body, her pain, and her resilience have also become symbols for those fighting chronic illness and disability. Frida's constant surgeries, her physical scars, and her vibrant self-portraits of vulnerability remind us that suffering does not diminish worth. It can fuel the fire of creativity and change. She exemplifies that the resilience to endure pain, to confront trauma, and to transform it into art is a revolutionary act, one that defies the silence and shame often associated with vulnerability. Moreover, her political stance, her commitment to social justice, to indigenous pride, and to revolutionary ideals continues to resonate. Frida was not just an artist, she was a voice for the oppressed, a champion of cultural identity, and an advocate for equality. Her images and her words echo in protests, banners, and activist movements around the world. She reminds us that art is inherently political, that beauty and resistance can coexist, and that courage is a continuous act of rebellion against injustice. In the modern era, her story has sparked conversations about representation, authenticity, and the importance of embracing our roots. She taught us that our heritage, our pain, and our imperfections are sources of strength, gifts that can inspire others and reshape the world. Her legacy encourages us to live boldly, to speak our truths, and to create without fear. Frida Kahlo's life and art serve as a testament to the power of resilience, authenticity, and the unbreakable spirit of those who refuse to be silenced. And so, as we reflect on her journey from the pain of her youth, through her tumultuous love affairs, to her revolutionary art and enduring influence, we are reminded that her story is not just about one woman's life, but about the collective human capacity to transform suffering into beauty and vulnerability into power. Frida's spirit lives on in every act of rebellion, every brushstroke of truth, and every voice daring to be different. In the end, her legacy challenges us to look beyond appearances, to honor our scars, and to celebrate our stories, because in doing so, we carry forward her message that even in the face of hardship, we can create worlds of color, courage, and resistance. Her life, her art, her voice, these are gifts we carry in our own stories, inspiring us to live with passion, authenticity, and resilience. Frida Kahlo is not gone. She is reborn each time we choose to stand tall in our truth, to paint our pain, and to love fiercely, unapologetically.